button. And as we go through this, there may be a point, depending on our discussion, where I might have to, stop it for a bit, and so we break it up a little bit, so I don't have to do one big long recording. You're still there, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Good. Interestingly, I can't get this into full screen, but I gather that it is recording this in the right fashion. Okay, let's see. Hold on a second. Maybe I get a full screen now. Okay, there we go. I think we're ready to roll. All righty. Well, good morning in D.C. from Hong Kong. Good evening.
Absolutely. That's right. 12 hours apart.
Yeah. Well, let me start. I'll kind of go down these questions a little bit. We can ad lib some of them, but from the beginning, how did you happen to get into this business and doing what you're doing today?
Well, to be honest with you, David, I always knew I wanted to be in the hotel business. In my very first job, I was 15 years old,
Wow.
and I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston, about 20 minutes outside of Boston, a little suburb. And I went to work for a Holiday Inn. That was the only full-service hotel in our town. And I became a bellman. And my parents would only let me work weekends because I was supposed to be doing schoolwork. But I was very fortunate in those early years because I worked for a very young innkeeper. And his name was David Buckley, and he was 26 years old. And I say I was fortunate because he kind of took me under his wing, and he said, if you're serious about this business, I'll make a commitment to move you from department to department every 6 months. And he did that. And by the time I got ready to go to hotel school, I had already worked, through food and beverage and some of the rooms departments, banquets, room service, and the kitchen. And it gave me a good overview to hotels.
Well, how did you end up deciding or getting into the track that led you into the sales aspect of things then?
Oh, that's kind of an interesting story. Well, I did go to hotel school, as you know. I went to the University of Denver, which is a 4-year hotel and restaurant management program. Came out with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. And back then, oh boy, we are old, David Jones.
Oh, thank you.
That was,
yes, we are.
A few years ago, and we were very fortunate to have multiple offers. There weren't a lot of hospitality schools yet in the United States, and there were multiple offers from hotel companies and restaurants, and I selected Hyatt Hotels, actually.
I remember that.
Start my career with, and went in their management training program. It was a full year long, and I figured that would give me great experience through an entire hotel in 1 year. And my first position was with the Anaheim Hyatt House back in California, just south of Los Angeles, right across from Disneyland. And I was going through my year-long program, and about 8 months in, I hit the sales track. And when I was in the sales track, I was working with a female director of sales. In fact, she was one of the first female directors of sales for hotels in California. This was in 1975. And she said, you want to be a general manager, but I really think you should have a great career in sales. And she kept me. She somehow talked the general manager into creating a full-time position, pulled me out of the training program, and I started as a tour and travel sales manager for the Anaheim Hyatt House.
Wow. Well, I remember when you and I first knew each other, you were still with Hyatt. So what brought the change in your career path that took you to Marriott? Because I think I was already, maybe I was still there. I can't remember. Yes, I was. I was still there because you were in San Francisco, right?
Right. It wasn't direct from Hyatt to Marriott.
Oh, wasn't?
Here was the career path. I spent 2 years with the Anaheim Hyatt, and then Hyatt moved me to the Hyatt Regency O'Hare to take the next position up in sales, which was a small meetings position. Back then it was called Hyatt Express.
Uh-huh.
And it was handling inquiry calls. We call it reactive sales now. Inquiry calls into the hotel for groups needing 50 rooms or less. And I started there, and I was there about a year and a half, and I ended up getting a call, actually from my old director of sales at the Anaheim Hyatt, who enticed me to apply for a job at the Anaheim Convention and Visitors Bureau. She really felt that would be good for a sales career, getting to know the larger meetings, working with a convention center and understanding how trade shows work. And she really urged me to apply. Even though I was very young and the candidate pool was quite large, I ended up getting that job in 1981, and I spent almost 4 years with the Anaheim Convention Bureau.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Now you take me back. I remember that too.
And then I guess it was my good fortune that our second largest hotel at the time was the Anaheim Marriott Hotel. And obviously you get a close working relationship between a convention bureau and your key convention hotels. And at the time, Harold Queiser was the director of marketing. Joe Rothman was the general manager, and they kept saying, Richard, your place is with Marriott. It's not with the convention bureau. And I kept saying, no, I really like the broader sell, the citywide sell. It's exciting, working with groups like the American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology, piecing together all the pieces, convention center, arena for general sessions, and hotels. Until finally one day in the summer of 1984, they put the vice president of sales, someone that I think you worked with, John Loeb, on.
Yeah, he hired me.
And he came after me and with a proposition to do a pre-opening with a 1,500-room hotel in San Francisco. And I have to tell you that to say no to a pre-opening, the shovel hadn't even gone in the ground yet, was just too exciting. So that's when I joined Marriott on that pre-opening team at the San Francisco Marriott.
Well, I definitely sympathize with you there. Opening hotels has always been a lot of fun too. I've done it 4 times, and I loved it. It's a great part.
It is. It definitely is. Positioning the hotel within the community, positioning the hotel with the customer base, establishing long-term relationships, making sure that you pick the right business, as the base business, and it was phenomenal. And we had, as you might remember, we had 5 years to pre-open that hotel, which is unheard of today.
Exactly.
We had a 5-year pre-sale.
Yeah. Well, let's fast forward a little bit to what you're doing now in the process of things. What does the vice president of association sales and industry relations do with Marriott today? What is your job responsibility?
Well, I got to this job by way of national sales. I was a national sales manager for Marriott for about 6 years. So I came to Washington direct from San Francisco to handle a portfolio of about 80 association accounts. And to be honest with you, David, I've always worked with associations and really enjoyed the association world, primarily because I think it gives you a great snapshot in what's going on with society, what's going on with global issues through the sciences, through engineering, through education, through medicine. You just get a great snapshot. The closer you get with our association partners, the more you realize kind of the trajectory of how change is happening in this world today. So I actually came into this position right around 2000, and Marriott never had this position before. And in fact, the other hotel chains, Hilton and Starwood and Hyatt, didn't have this position before. And we kind of recognized that associations were the base of group business for many of our big hotels. As you might know, Marriott's made up of over 3,700 hotels now, but 60 hotels in the United States are what we call our convention and resort network of hotels. About 60 of them.
60 now, wow.
And about 60 of those hotels represent about 80% of our large group business. So we realized in order to be successful, we had to not only book those associations one at a time, but we had to enter into some multi-year agreements and keep them within Marriott so they weren't bouncing from a Marriott to a Hyatt to a Sheraton. And in order to do that, we kind of needed a coordinated strategy. We needed a sales team that understood associations. So I guess I was at the right place at the right time, was able to kind of create that job. And my responsibility is directly for an above property sales team currently of about 20 that sell to the top 1,000 association accounts. And then I have what we call in the States here dotted line responsibility with another sales team that handles the next size of associations. Those are our senior account executives. They're in their markets. We have about 34 of those, and they handle the next level of 2,500 association accounts. So that's kind of the part of my job that's Vice President of Association Sales. The segment has an annual goal. Our team of 20 this year had a book right around $700 million in revenue, U.S. dollars, and about 3.2 million room nights to get to that.
Wow.
And that's in our just team of 20. And I guess the other part of my job, industry relations, means I have that wonderful opportunity of creating the relationships with industry organizations that not only represent associations, but also help better the industry. Groups like the American Society of Association Executives, the Professional Convention Managers Association of America, PCMA, DMAI, which stands for the Destination Marketing Association International, IAEE, which stands for the International Association of Exhibitions and Events. So I kind of am responsible for that executive relationship and what we do with them in terms of direct sales opportunities and sponsorship.
Oh, well, very good. Wow, that's a pretty impressive number that you're working with in terms of that amount of business out there. What is your let's say authority level at this stage in terms of being able to confirm that business for hotels? How does that relationship work with the hotel level staff and when you're working with those various associations?
Well, that's a great question. It's not as far as I'd like it to be. I mean, ideally, we'd like to be the contracting body on behalf of the hotels for this large group business. But right now, we still create the opportunity, work with the hotel on confirming it, but still the hotel has the ultimate authority, if you will, on the deal. They quote the rates, and they negotiate the fine points of the contract. Obviously, we're a coach on both sides of the equation. We work with the customer as well as the hotel in order to confirm that business, but the hotel is still the ultimate decision maker.
Do you are any of those hotels international that you're working with, or predominantly mostly North America?
No, as time goes on, these associations are going all over the place. The healthy ones are well into Asia and Europe, and some into the Middle East. So we do work with hotels in all continents. I think a last survey, 17% of our association clients are booking at least one meeting outside the U.S. a year, if not more. Usually when associations start to foray into international waters, they look for partner organizations in that country where they want to go. And they might do a joint meeting or a co-located meeting or a joint sponsored meeting. So sometimes the U.S.-based association isn't involved in the logistics. Their partner in country is responsible for the logistics.
Yeah.
But oftentimes associations like Project Management Institute, a global brand now with their certification, they have over 430,000 members of Project Management Institute. They do over 60 meetings in India a year, for example.
Wow.
And they book those from their headquarters office up in Pennsylvania.
Interesting. Well, that relationship you're talking about, I know one of the things about mainland China is you basically, in the medical field, for instance, you have to have one of the medical societies sponsor you in order to do that. So
NGOs are very important in that relationship.
No question. Well, let me look at my list of questions so I stay on track to what I ask my own students to do in the process of things. So you've told us a little bit about the overall sales organization in terms of how you relate and so on. What do you think is the greatest asset that Marriott has as a company to offer these association customers you're dealing with?
Oh, that's an excellent question, David. I really believe that Marriott's culture is still unique in the hospitality field. And the culture stems from the fact that we've only had currently 3 chairmen of our company. So it's easy to keep the core culture. And the core culture really revolves around the expression, we take great care of our associates so they can take great care of their customers. And I think that really gives us an edge in terms of how we treat all customers, not just associations. But also, it pulls through in how customers feel when they're on site. And fortunately, as you well know, we don't have a lot of turnover. In other words, the most important position on a property for a hotel, for an association customer, is the event manager. It's great to have a great sales relationship and have a great booking experience. But really, when the rubber meets the road, it's all about that convention service manager, or as we call them now in the States, the event manager.
Yeah.
And when you look across our 60 convention resort hotels, there is very senior level of tenure in those event managers, names that you'll still remember, David. So I think that's really one of our secret weapons. That combined with great floor service. I mean, we invented the program called the Red Coat program, which means an on-site meeting planner doesn't need to search for someone to meet his or her needs, whether it's changing the temperature in a meeting room or changing the set in a meeting room. They have a single relationship with whoever's wearing the red coat on the floor, and those changes or tweaks can get made very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I tell my students in one of my class that I go into this whole convention venue, and I ask a question, because I tell them that, basically convention venue hotels, in my opinion, they started with Hilton. Hilton was really the first to build big convention hotels.
Right.
But I'll tell you something. When I ask that question on an exam, the majority of students answer Marriott. And so I think that's a tribute to you and the company and where it's come, because, the perception today is that that's the business Marriott was in. But as you know, when you joined Marriott and when I was with Marriott, that was not the case. We were trying to catch up.
A little motel built in 1957.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the first real convention hotel was the old downtown Atlanta hotel. It didn't open until the mid-'60s.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the good side. So let me ask you this, especially when you're in the tough economy that the North American market is still in. We're a little better off here in Asia today, but it's always precarious. What do you find to be the toughest aspect in terms of selling to the meeting professional today?
Well, especially on the association side, because that's what I live and breathe. Associations are very risk adverse. And by that, I mean they live and die by their meeting revenue. So they don't necessarily want to book too far out. They want to keep things a little bit close in, especially if they know that there's going to be availability. So the hardest time that we have is getting associations comfortable with the contracting process and making commitments far into the future so that they're able to secure their preferred dates in the cities that they actually want to go to. And what we're finding in these tough economies, and we've had 2.5, 3 years of groups not performing to their contract, and I'm not sure if your students know the word attrition, but not meeting their commitments and their contracts. So added that to us asking for further out business, it's causing associations to be a little bit gun shy. And more so now than ever before, we're having to craft relationships with the chief financial officers, with the volunteer board of directors, and really letting them know that we can build flexibility into those contracts. So we want your definite booking, but we're more than happy to adjust those room commitments on an annual basis as needed and change the size and scope of the meeting. And that's worked somewhat. But still, I emphasize the fact that the toughest thing today is that associations are far more sensitive and risk adverse than they ever were before.
Yeah. Well, I know the industry is always cyclical, and at some points it's a buyer's market where the planners can set their own terms. In other cases, it's a seller's market where the hotels set their terms. What kind of a scenario are we in today?
Well, we're just coming out of a buyer's market. If the economy continues to grow, and obviously what drives our demand in Marriott, or it might not be obvious, but the primary factor is the business traveler. Once the individual business traveler is back, it helps us get our pricing ability back and our ability to raise rates. So last year was a great buyer's market, but it started to turn in the fall, and hotels weren't as flexible with future rate quotes as they had been in the past. And from a Marriott perspective and an owner's perspective, we hope that continues, because we are supposed to be able to have an increase in RevPAR somewhere between 5 and 7% this year. So I say it's starting to tilt into a seller's market again.
Yeah, that sounds good then. Well, let me ask you this question as I wrote it so that I make sure that I ask it in the right context. What do you feel are the most important needs of the convention and meeting professional that a hotel has to understand to be successful today? What do you think are the issues that come to your mind that are the most important to address their needs?
Well, I know we kind of maybe overuse the word experience, but the guest experience, is not only critical for the individual guest, but it's critical for the group guest as well. So how good a job are we meeting the needs of the meeting attendee as they're attending the meeting? What do I mean by that? Say they're attending the American Heart Association. What are we doing as a hotel to help the American Heart Association pull the brand into the hotel? What are we doing to help the experience of the guest match the objectives for that meeting, whether it's education or networking? For example, are we able to show content on our TVs in the rooms? Do we have welcome messages from their presidents? When you walk into a convention headquarters hotel, do you feel like you're coming to the American Heart Association meeting, or you just feel like you're coming to a Marriott hotel? So I think service levels when you look across the brands are pretty much the same. Certainly, we've all spent billions of dollars upgrading hotels, and I'm sure your students are aware of the big initiative around great rooms and changing lobbies to being more active places for networking and community building. Well, I think the next step is how well we align the facilities and the services of the hotel to that particular annual meeting is going to give us the advantage. And understanding what they're trying to achieve at that meeting, and recognizing that every meeting is not the same.
So you're concerned about the business value for that meeting today, which I think is a term I hear a lot today that I like because, through the years, we have tended to refer to meetings as pieces of business. And, I hate that term. And I think that sounds like, you're just in a bidding war. It's a piece of business. And you got to treat them more as a human interaction, that they are.
Well, the next generation of salespeople that are currently in market, they call them opportunities. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A little more positive than...
Yeah. When I do sales training kind of things, I always say, let's call it a revenue opportunity. Let's not call it a piece of business. But it's hard to stay away from that.
Yeah. I think now more than ever, especially with association meetings, because the big difference between a corporate meeting and an association meeting, a corporation mandates its attendees to attend that meeting, where an association doesn't mandate anything. They put a meeting out there and hope for the attendance.
Yeah.
So that individual attendee makes a buying decision every year, either based on what they've heard about that annual meeting or what their past experiences have been. So again, I go back to the word experiences. You have to understand what that individual wants at that annual meeting and meet it, because they measure that return on value or return on their own investment every year on whether they're going to click to register or not.
Absolutely. I'm gonna take a quick stop break here and stop the recording, and then I'm gonna change the tone a little bit and talk more about the salespeople themselves. So let me go back here a second to my recorder. I don't know if I can find it. Where it goes? There's my call recorder. Okay, so I'm gonna